Actually, the first principle of any living body is to save himself. That is the first principle, and that should be our starting point. The Upanishads, in the Upanishads, it is said, Asatau ma sadgamaya, tamasau ma jyotirgamaya, mrityor mam mratam gamaya. I am mortal, make me eternal. I am ignorant, filled with nescience, take me to science, knowledge. And I am threatened with misery, guide me towards bliss. We should begin our research work in these three phases: how to save one's own self and save the world, how to remove darkness and attain light, and how to remove misery and taste nectar, the sweet life of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Sat Chid Ananda. Satyam Shivam Sundaram. So, the next topic of the next section reads, Science devours itself. This should be the line of our search. All other inquiries are false. This so-called scientific research is a wild goose chase. It is suicidal. The atomic researchers will soon prove that this kind of science devours itself. It sucks its own blood. It will live, feed on its own flesh and the flesh of its friends. Material scientific knowledge is no knowledge. We must acquaint ourselves with a vital understanding of pure, real knowledge. We must absorb ourselves and others in that knowledge, remove darkness and bring light, remove misery and establish eternal peace. Science means not to extend the jurisdiction of exploitation, knowing full well there will be a reaction. By extending the space of exploitation, we will also surely be exploited. If one knowingly commits an offense, then he is charged with more punishment. So-called scientific advancement is suicidal, and it is clearly proven. Presently, the leading countries of the world are threatening each other with atomic weapons, the highest product of the scientists.
Prabhuji,
Yes,
could
Arun. Yes.
Every time I read Śrīdhar Mahārāj's books and chapters, it's like an ocean of new knowledge and insights that come to me. So maybe this might be a good time just to do a little retrospect. So the way, when Śrīdhar Mahārāj says science, the root word that he's referring to in Sanskrit is Vigyan. And thus there is a proper method and methodology to be scientific, which really comes to understanding what this is and what can be observed, and then what are the root principles based on which I can start to evaluate what I'm experiencing. And I see that in modern education system, this part is totally taken away. It's a very mechanical, what can I do based on the material observations that I can do, without any foundation to the philosophical bedrock by which you can do an observation, inference, and hypothesis, and some validation. So I think that is one of the biggest folly right now. And yet, if we don't understand the philosophical bedrock where Vigyan or science stays on, then we will fall into this mechanical world. And as Guru Maharaj is saying, which is really counterproductive, a man-eat-man situation. And today, if I look at it, while we may not have an immediate atomic war, but the artificial intelligence, for example, the mode of continuously building a behemoth so that you can understand the deeper nature of mechanical life and then exploit that to rule and really eat the blood of other people in the form of artificial intelligence is a reality. So I think what he's saying is we need to really do a deep introspection to first understand what is Vigyan, and then what are the ang of Vigyan, which is spiritual, and really it's a scientific method to say, who am I? What can allow me to properly understand within the limited capability I have this, and then be able to differentiate what I can see through my senses. And so I think there's a lot that we can learn from this. And though we might be brought up in a pseudo-scientist environment, we can start to understand the true meaning of science and Vigyan.
Very true. Thank you for that explanation. And what the scientific process is not haphazard, is process driven. It's exemplified several places, and especially even if you read Srimad Bhagavad Gita and how Sri Arjun comes to the point of accepting the words of the Supreme Lord. He displays it by how he accepts it. He doesn't just say, okay, yes, by blind faith I've accepted whatever you've said. No. And that to me is really something which is worth noting, especially to the scientific community and persons who are of scientific persuasion. One may not be like a scientist in a lab, but how a person conducts themselves should be scientific. And like, for example, Sri Arjuna says, Sarvam etad datam manne yanamama vadasi Keshava. So I accept everything that you have told me in its entirety, O Keshava. And then further along he goes and he says, Ahustvam rishya sarve devarshi naradas-tatha asito devalo vyaso swayam chaeva bravishime. So he says, again, one of the things of accepting a hypothesis which is now becoming a theory is also some of known personalities in the past who are established in a field of science, in this case science of consciousness. So he's naming them: Asita, Devala, Vyas, Narada. These are the top personalities of that time, and they have all said the same thing. It corroborates what you now are saying to me. And you have revealed the same thing to me. So I accept each and everything that you have said in its entirety, without leaving anything out. That is scientific to me. Your comments?
Yes, Prabhu. I mean, nobody goes today through WhatsApp or Wikipedia and say, and whatever else XY, blue or yellow journalism there is, to say, now I have studied and I know the matter. it's always a subject has to be referred to. What am I studying? And who is there known through my own experience or other people's experience? Who is an expert, previous expert? Can I go read their book, or can I go directly, understand from them what they are saying, so I can, one, listen to their instruction, internalize it, and do Vigyan on it. Vigyan is always hypothesis, synthesis, right? What is being told, what can I synthesize with my experience, observable experience through the gross senses and through the finer faculties of mind and others, right? And in the case of the transcendental science of consciousness, then it is, like it or not, once somebody does a properly sanctioned yoga, allows even with this material body to connect to that string that is the rope to our existence. So everything is possible, and there is a proper way whereby you have to go to established masters to learn from them, rather than say, I am born today and I am going to now create my own science and my observation. This life and this faculty that I have is so limited, it'll be a fool's errand to think one can accomplish something useful.
Very true. Excellent. So, can I go on?
Yes, Prabhu, please.
All right. The next section reads, Neutron bomb, death ray. What is the difference between the atomic bomb and the neutron bomb? The neutron bomb is something like a death ray that will kill the people but will not destroy the buildings. The neutron bomb, man will be killed, the houses, the buildings, and everything else will be left behind. The bed will be there, the furniture, everything else will be there, but only the life will be gone, and the bodies will become rotten. That is the effect of the neutron bomb. And those who emerge victorious will come to enjoy all these things. They will have to remove the dead bodies and fill the place up with their own men. This is action and reaction in the plane of exploitation. So this is a suicidal civilization. The whole civilization is rotten to the bottom. They are exploiting nature for the apparent good of human society, but it is incurring a loan from nature that must be paid to the farthing with interest. Because they do not believe this, they will have no relief. They will be forced to clear the debt. Nature won't forgive them. Nature is there like a computer, calculating. So this civilization is anti-civilization. The whole thing is rotten, a camouflage, a treachery to the soul world. But our policy is different. Plain living and high thinking. Our policy should be to make the best use of a bad bargain. Somehow or other, we have come here. So now we have to utilize our time and energy in such a way that with the least exploitation, we can get out of this world. Editor's note, shortly after this meeting, Dr. Murphy became an initiated disciple of Śrīla Śrīdhar Mahārāj. Hare Krishna. So, interesting point here. Śrīla Śrīdhar Mahārāj is telling us this is the plane of exploitation, which means To exist on this plane, simply to exist on this plane means to be an exploiter. There is no other way. Ahastani sahastanam apadani chatushpadam laghuni tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. So this cycle of exploitative existence one cannot avoid. And that exceptional case where one comes to this understanding that this is a bad bargain, like Guru Mahārāj is saying, if one by divine grace comes to this understanding that this is a bad bargain, then there is a possibility of finding an exception to the general rule of exploitation. Then we can get out of this mess. But till such time that one realizes it's action and reaction constantly, whether one knows it or doesn't know it, does not matter. In the court of law, ordinary court of law, if you go and if you say plead ignorance, it will never be an excuse. They will never listen to you. Like, oh, since you didn't know, so you committed this offense. Ignorance is not an excuse. So then how can we even think of this at the subtle level? Like, oh, I didn't know that there was action-reaction at the subtle level. The law of karma is acting. No. As a human being, that is your duty to know that such a law exists and it is acting. Is Dr. Deshmukh still tuned in, or is he on his other class?
He's there. I'll just check with him. He's
Okay.
there, but I'll just
No
check
problem.
with him.
I was just
No,
curious.
he was very keen to join today in any case, because he said, while I have a class, I must be there. So yeah, but he said that slightly later part.
No,
Definitely, yeah.
no.
But this is so wonderful what you both are saying. So let's hear.
Yeah.
It's so well. And I was reading this and I shared with you. So it's all coming live into my mind. I'm so blessed. That's
Hare
what I would
Krishna.
say.
Jai Somji. It's always good to have your association. So since you said he's a yogi, I'm inclined to think like Ashtang Yoga. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Very nice. So the entire, I think, sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita is Dhyan Yoga, right? And he says,
I'm saying, and he also does a lot of research on consciousness, this whole mind body, how the mind controls the body. That's basically what we're saying, right? The subject, right? So it's this whole aspect of consciousness,
Very
that's
nice.
what, yeah.
So in the sixth chapter, toward the end, the Lord glorifies the yogi. He says, be a yogi. He says, tapasvi bhayo dhiko yogi jnani bhayo pimato dhiko karmi bhayaschā dhiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. So be a yogi. And then in the very next verse, then he says that among yogis, yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mata. He says, of all the yogis, first he's making this distinction between the tapasvi, the jnanis, the ones who are attracted to that supreme Brahman, effulgence. And the karmi people who are making their work perfect, so he's making that distinction first. Like among all of that, then yogis are the best. A yogi is the highest. Then he draws a gradation within the yogis. He says, of all the yogis, because there are so many kinds of yogis, yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana. One who is completely dedicated to me. Me means Krishna. To the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Swayam Bhagavan, Shyam Sundar. Madgatena antaratmana. And that Shraddhavan bhajate yomam further qualifies it as with Shraddha, that affectionate faith. Bhajate yomam. Bhajan can only be by a devotee. Bhakti Yoga. Bhajate yomam. And then he leaves it as sa me yukta tamo mata. This is simply my opinion. So take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So there are different kinds of yogas, Hatha Yoga, Kriya Yoga. Ashtang Yoga is essentially Patanjali. Ashtanga means like 8 angas, yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. So like that. It's very nice, very good. Several people do it to various degrees.
But Prabhuji, because Dr. Sachin is also a neuroscientist and a yogi, this could be a good time for us to be able to associate with him and share.
Yeah.
Because eventually, when one is doing yoga, one is to control the constant disruption that the mind is evaluating based on the senses and objectivation that's happening in the brain. And that's the first step of the Ashtang Yoga is, can I control to some extent my mind, so I can channel the energy of the mind to something that is purposeful. So that is the strength for the Ashtang Yoga, because that will then allow one to understand, as in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna has fully explained to us what is this, what are these subtle bodies that we have and how do they work. And fortunately, because I am in information science and AI related field also, the current understanding of how the human neurology has been the foundation of artificial neural network that allows us to really understand at low level, at the mechanical level, to begin with, what is this mind? Where is the cognitive function resident? And once we understand the cognitive function and how remembrance and identification and evaluation, those are the integral part of living neural system, which have been well documented, and the current theory, all the theories are the best ones in my view, are the ones that are built around the Hopfield network, which is really a mechanism for me to recognize based on inputs that I'm getting from the 5 senses. So, what you do is kind of an associative memory, or once I get this senses, I can identify and pin that to an object to say this is what it is. So it's very interesting that we start to get some insight to the current sciences and recognition function. But then recognition function and higher levels of brains could go to some level. Then comes the key question. which is consciousness. Because consciousness is a property, or at least the way it is being understood, it is an intrinsic capability that is built into a living entity to know. So it has been a hard challenge for people to pin their, what is Chetana? What is Chet? Consciousness. Because and then, also being a particle physicist that I am part-time, the quantum world allows you to see the mechanism of perception built into the living entity is by my consciousness wanting to know, wanting to detect the environment and the objects therein. And the most basic way of the consciousness to know is by entanglement. So all this physical fantastic machine that I have in the form of the human body, at the root level of that, the Chetana, the only way we quantum physicists know that we can know a particle is here or there, or some set of particles are here or there, is through interaction with those. And that is entanglement, and the entanglement is not between particles. The entanglement, as we understand, latest, is between consciousness entanglement with material.
That's right.
That is the highest level that is today understood, and that is beautiful. There is miles to go yet. But what we can understand is the current scientific mechanism coming from the material science is compatible and not in conflict with the gyan, with the knowledge that is described in our scriptures. That is the beauty. The religion or the faith, is not in conflict, because after all, our perception has to be based on scientific outlook. We cannot say science is divorced from spirituality. No. In my experience plane, everything needs to be explainable. And I can go to a master's feet and ask for help. And that help will come, and one can get what one is seeking. That's the little part that I wanted to just share very quickly.
Very nice.
I would like to share something, Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Yes.
So it's a very inspiring talk, and it's a very dear topic to me.
Okay.
So I always learned that the human mind is built for bliss, the stillness, and the human bodies are built for movement. Mm-hmm. And in the current era, it happens the opposite. So our minds are moving and bodies are sitting still. And that conflict creates a lot of problems for everyone. Mm-hmm. And all the science kind of collaborates with that idea also, because a lot of diseases, they are born into the mind. And with the communication, as you said, that sometimes we believe what we see, but do we really hear what we see? So it's kind of how the Maya, the illusion takes over sometime between what is real and what is not real. And these questions also burns us. Who am I? And what I do. So the Shankaracharya, there is a wonderful story that he was walking on the street, confused, and he was asking, who am I? Who am I? In Sanskrit, it's called as koham, koham. And a bird on the tree was smiling, and he said, what kind of person are you? You don't know. Soham, soham, you are he, you are he. So that means we are the reflection of this higher reality. So what that reality is, that higher consciousness. So we live for higher consciousness. We live in higher consciousness. We also cook for higher consciousness. We eat in higher consciousness. So that automatically becomes integral part of our being. Now the thoughts which come in our mind, they also have a propensity, that energy behind the thought. So we are the creator of the thought. And the bottom where the thoughts come from is always pure, but the surface is always turbulent. And yoga teaches us that capability to settle things down on all levels through the parasympathetic nervous system. And the breath is a bridge which combines our mind and body. So once we tune in the breath, so breath is life, so the prana, so it channels all these energy senses, the sense organs, action organs within us.
So the one question that I have, Sachinji, is I've practiced Ashtang myself. Yam,
Yes.
Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar,
Yes,
Dharana, Dhyan, and Samadhi to some extent. The subtle air is moving. Whether you and I or anyone else is aware of it or not at any point in time. It's not that me, by raising or by increasing my awareness, I have somehow started something new.
right.
This is what people forget,
Yes,
that there is a rhyme and reason to everything, whether material or spiritual.
yes,
The Sripada Sankaracharya, we worship him.
yes,
He's the one who said, Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Devo Devaki Putraiva, Eko Mantrasya Tasya Namaniyani,
right.
and Karmapya Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. Who is Sripada Sankaracharya referring to? The son of Devaki,
Right,
Bhagavan Shri Krishna himself.
right,
Well, people forget that. People read the Bhagavad Gita, people read all of these scriptures, they forget this basic
Right.
principle that you are
Right.
forgetting the main hero, the main person, the
Yeah.
supreme person who is speaking this.
yes,
Pay attention to what he says.
right,
But people don't do that. They skip it. Sripada Shankaracharya says that. Bhaj Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja
Bhajago in the Mudamate.
Moodamate. Like, oh, you foolish person, sing the glories of Govinda. But
Right,
people won't do that.
Right,
They will catch on to some aphorism and they will live with it for the rest of their lives, trying to figure it out as if they have the capacity to figure it out.
right,
Whereas he says, Matta smritira jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness of
Right.
everything that is. So that is our conception of consciousness is it's infinite. It's infinite. But there is a center to it. There is a center to the infinite, and that is Krishna. He is the highest harmony and the highest beauty. Beauty is supreme. Consciousness, once one understands what consciousness is, truly, it is undeniable that the beauty principle is supreme, is the most powerful,
right,
right? And what is beauty to the eye is harmony to the ear. Principle is the same.
very rightly said, yeah.
That is the Krishna conception. That is beauty rules. We Satchid Anand. Sat means to
Satchid
exist. Right now, we are not existing. Why?
Right.
Because we are mortal. We fear death. We have taken this project called life, which has a definite beginning, lasts for some time, and has a definite end.
Right,
So we're not we're not Sat. Our existence is Asat, Achit.
Yeah.
Our Chetana right now is Achit.
Yes.
And Ananand, we are looking for pleasure. So from Asat, Achit, Ananand to Sat, Chid, Anand.
Right.
Being existing, to exist, to be conscious of that existence, and then fulfillment of that conscious existence to the extreme is Krishna consciousness.
Right.
That is the highest yoga.
Right.
That is the central point of yoga. I'm not denying any other yogas because they are beautiful.
Yeah.
But the central conception of divinity, as revealed by Srimad Mahaprabhu himself, who is none other than the Lord, the Supreme Lord himself, is this.
Very rightly said.
And our Gurudev, he said this again and again. You've met him, right, Sachinji?
Yes.
He said that. Like, he first told everyone that because he knows people don't know what they want. He says, you need love, you need beauty, you need affection. So first, understand what is it that you need first at the core of your being. Then Sat, Chid and Anand will follow.
Right.
But first we have to identify what is our innermost requirement.
Right.
Like that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you inspired.
No, you said it perfectly right. And the integration is the beauty of what you are saying and what we're thinking, that is not in conflict with the other world. It's actually getting revalidated, like Prabhuji was saying, through the AI, medicine, through the Ayurveda. Everything tells us to the same truth.
Yes.
And how to bring life in life. So that's really the quest of mankind.
Yes.
Right.
Hare Krishna.
And Prabhuji, you wonderfully said, the projection, what I see outside is my own projection. And in this particular book, Subjective Evolution, our Param Guru Mahārāj brings and states this fact many times, to say this world exists, is the world that we see is a projection that is coming from the consciousness. And it is, in the beginning, it is hard for a traditionally studied scientific person the way I was out of the high school or engineering college. But then once one dives deep, does some deep dive into the highest material science that you can get your hand on, then, and for me, I was very, very fortunate that I happen to have background which is very multifarious, all the way from quantum, electronics, information science, neuroscience, machine learning, that it gives a beautiful insight to say this, what I'm really seeing through this material world is really springing out from the Chetana. And the five senses, which are very dull, low bandwidth, low signal to noise ratio, still is able to perceive some part of the reality. Not a perfect one because of its dullness and because there are only five senses. And of course, we know of animals which have got four senses and we think they're stupid and they don't know the reality. Like a snail not knowing the moon and the gravity, for example. We have five, so with that limitation, we can perceive certain things for sure. And based on that, really, then who is the perceiver? Who is the drishta? And what is being observed? Again, beautifully it is explained, or at least being currently we are arriving at in the quantum physics side as to the observer and the observed. And then in the Vedanta, there's such lucid, clear explanation that intrinsically my Chetana can understand that. It does not need an external validation. It knows, oh yeah, this thing I know is true.
Yeah.
Vedanta.
I am happy today.
Yeah.
I know I am true. I don't need an instrument to figure out I am happy.
Vedanta, Sachinji, it begins with this aphorism, Janmadhyasya yatah nyavayad itaratas charthesha abhigya swarat.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it says there is a central point of origin of everything that exists. Janmadhyasya yatah. It's not all irrelevant.
Yeah.
So it identifies the center here. Janmadhyasya yatah nyavayad itaratas charthesha abhigya arthesha abhigya. And that central point alone knows why and how everything exists and for what purpose.
Right.
He is avigya and swarat. He is autocratic. One cannot have him in anyone's pocket.
Right.
He is in no one's pocket.
Right.
Swarat. That is Krishna.
And
That
as
also
you-
means
as
we
you
cannot
said,
apply our rules. Yes, go ahead.
And as you said, Prabhu, the self-validation carries a lot of value, and the surrender is the most courageous thing.
Without surrender, that is, if one is Sharanagat to some extent, then all of these things, they will become super clear. Otherwise, if one has that envy and if one is in that exploitative mood, then and if yoga, if the yoga that one is practicing actually, like you're saying, stills one's own like perturbations to the extent that one can hear this message,
Yes.
then that is super successful.
Yeah.
That's what I would humbly submit to. And knowing you're a great personality. You've associated with.
In the Vedanta, the yoga says that we call it the 8 limbs of yoga, not the steps. So limbs are integral part of us. So my arm is not separate than I am, and I am not my arm. I am something more than my arm or my knee. But if you pull my arm, you pull me whole, right, towards you, and that's what we call it, the as, right, the real attraction to figure this out, to surrender, and then also the immersion into the process. And the physical practice prepares us externally for the inner exploration.
Very true. Yes, absolutely it does. No doubt about that. I can't argue with that. So we're so happy to have your association, Sachinji. If you can somehow continue with us, because you won't believe, you kind of brought up our next subject, which is going to be the next topic, is the origin of the soul. So Srila Śrīdhar Mahārāj talks about the origin of the soul. Like, who am I and where am I from? Not like America or India. Like talking about the soul. Like, who am I? Really, like, I'm not this body. I'm more than this body. And where am I from? So how all this began, the genesis, the background, it's all explained beautifully here with appropriate references from Shastra, and if one wants, then one can research also. So I just humbly request if you can kindly give us your association more, maybe next week.
I'll tell you a small thing I remember. That in the earlier phase of spirituality, when you ask somebody, who are you? Then they say, I am man, woman, this old, engineer, doctor, scientist, whatever. After a while, and then they say, I am somebody, like I am somebody, the matter. Then when they evolve more, they start saying, I am everybody. Right? And I am everybody. I can see myself in others. And the third one, they say, I am nobody. That means I am beyond all this. I'm just the awareness.
And then beyond that is the stage where one says, I'm a unit, I'm of infinite, and by that I am infinite, but still I am the servitor infinite of
Yes.
the master consciousness. That is the highest.
Exactly.
That is the culmination point of all of these.
Yes.
So we can study that step by step without rushing through it and see how beautifully it all harmonizes these various conceptions. So by the grace of
Yeah,
the
go
Lord
ahead.
and
Yeah.
by the grace of Vaishnavas, by the grace of Gurudev, it was very beautiful to have you. If you don't mind, now I shall have, since we're
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
we'll have some kirtan by your, if you permit, Sachinji and everyone else, the panelists. Preeti ji is also here.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay, excellent. Let me grab them. Let me grab the elite Sankirtan Kirtan team, and you please continue. I'll be right back.
Dr. Sachin, are you also a medical doctor?
Yeah, I used to do the regular medicine before, and then I went into more of the alternative aspect of things. So the Ayurveda, yoga, meditation, and how to use it for prevention, and then also for as a more like therapeutic to help into certain things.
Okay.
So he's a trained Ayurveda doctor and a homeopathy doctor both.
Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Hariharaya Namah Krishnaya Davaya Namaha
Hariharaya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha
Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan
Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan
Giridhari Gopinatha Madana Mohan.
Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan
Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra.
Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Chandra
Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta
Jaya Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath.
Jaya Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath
Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunath.
Jiva Gopala Bhatta Raghunath
Ichai Gosai Kori Charana Vandan.
Echa Gosai Kori Charana Vandan
Jaha Hoite Vignana Shavishta Puran.
Jaha Krishna Sapita Puran
Ichai Gosai Jar Muitara Das.
Echa Gosai Jar Mohitara Das
Talsavara Padarenu Mora Panchagras. Tandera Charana Se Bhi Bhakta Sane Bas. Janame Janame Mora Abhilash. Ichai Gosai Jabe Braja Koila Bas. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Nitya Leela Gorila Prakash. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Brindaban.
Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan
Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majai Aman.
Guru Vaishnava Padma
Shri Guru Vaishnava Pad Padma Koriyas.
Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Koriya
Hari Nam Sankirtana Kohe Narottama Das.
Harinam Sankirtanam Das
Hari Haraya Namah Krishnaya Davaya Namaha.
Narayana Nama Krishna Adavaya Namaha
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Adavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jai Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar.
Jai
Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar, Jai Gauranga Sundar.
Jai. Okay, Anika ji, are you ready? Please take it away.
Jaya Saparika Shri Shri Guru Granga Gandhavar Govinda Sundar Giridhar Gopi Laju Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Patmang Shaparavari Chakra Vari Asat Sat Shri Srimad Bhakti Sundar Dev-Goswāmī Mahārāj Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Patmang Shaparavari Chakra Vari Asat Sat Shri Srimad Bhakti Rasaksha Dev-Goswāmī Mahārāj Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Patmang Shaparavari Chakra Vari Asat Sat Shri Srimad Bhakti Sanatana Swasti Thakur Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Goti Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Chachi Nanda Bhakti Noda Thakur Ki Jai. Jaya Om Vishnu Pad Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Anugarga Ki Jai. Namaskar Śrīla Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Baladeva Vidyabhushan Ki Jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Prabhu Ki Jai. Shri Nurtama Shyamananda Shri Vaishnachar Prabhu Ki Jai. Srila Vindravan Das Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Ki Jai. Saprasada Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Saprasada Shri Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kunda Girdhari Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Lakshmi Vardeva Ki Jai. Sudha Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya Shri Nrsimha Deva Ki Jai. Bhakta Prabhupada Maharaj Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai. Ganga Jamna Ji Ki Jai. Grantaraja Shun Bhagavatam Chaitanya Charamatra Ki Jai. Vishnu Vaishnava Raja Sabha Ki Jai. Avrat Machi Chaitanya Mat Ki Jai. Dadhyasaka Mat Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Shri Damarpur Ki Jai. Shri Narvadip Ki Jai. Vrindavan Purisatam Dham Ki Jai. Baladeva Subhadra Jagna Ji Ki Jai. Shri Govinda Kunda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Shiva Ganga Ji Ki Jai. Samavita Vaishnava Mandal Ki Jai. Samavita Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gopnande Hari Hari
Hari Hari Bol. Jai. Anika ji, Preeti ji, Bikram ji and family ki jai. Our divine panelists Shri Balaram Krishna Prabhu, Chinmayadev Prabhu ki jai. Somnath ji ki jai. Sachin Deshmukh ji ki jai. Someone else is there. I don't know their name. Ki jai. Jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Pavan Janardhan Maharaj ki jai. Jai Srila Bhakti Nirmal Acharya Maharaj ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Acharya Vrinda ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Sannasi Vrinda ki jai. Vishwarenyar Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Nittai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bo.
Sripad Jairam Prabhu ki jai. Abadide ki jai. Kirtan Group ki jai.
All right, so I have